Welcome to Betting Weekly Extra Time European Edition. You're with Dan Roebuck alongside me, Steve Wyss and James Eastham. Steve, a full complement of leagues to choose from for the first time since mid-December. Spoilt for choice, or does it make the challenge even tougher? How are you?
Good day to you, Dan and James. I think it's good to have all the leagues back, really. Do you know what I've actually done this week? I've got 4 bets. My best bet in each of the leagues. I've got an extra bet in Spain as well. And then I've kind of given my second best bet in each leagues on the leans. So that's how I've worked it this week. Pick the best bet I like from each of the 4 as making them official units. So I've kept it kind of straightforward that way. And we don't mention Bundesliga unders, Dan. I've erased those from my memory.
I wasn't going to mention it. I mean, I was going to ask what the weather was like in Germany, but I scratched that from the script. I just didn't want to go there. James, back to form last week. A lovely sweep with your Monday plays. Well done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was a good week. Well, certainly a good Monday night for me and Steve, and pleasing in a way because one of those picks it's a team we're going to come on to again today was Juventus, who had tripped us up a little bit, but I decided to stick with them on Monday night, and they came through for us on the handicap, which is always encouraging when you've been hit badly by a team, but you decide to stick with your theory on them, and then it pays off. So yeah, we're in good shape going into this weekend. We're obviously looking to build profit now as we work our way into the second half of the season.
P&L on screen for you, plenty to discuss as per usual. Let's hope that we can add to the numbers over the course of this weekend. Get your comments in and your picks via YouTube, of course, and make sure you subscribe and like. We are going to kick off in Italy this week with a big game on Saturday night in Serie A locally. It's Cagliari against Juventus, 2:45 Eastern stateside. Cagliari plus 600, Juve short price -$2 here with a tie at plus 290. Steve, Juve top of the 4 and the 6 match form tables. They're 7 points off top spot Spalletti's boys. They are scoring goals, keeping clean sheets. And I guess the big question, and James sort of alluded to it earlier and indeed last week, is the market keeping up here? Is there still some juice to be had with Juve? You've got a unit on this game.
I just think we've got to keep backing Juventus, really. We have been hot on them for the last 3 or 4 weeks. We've cashed on a couple of occasions. Obviously, still the Lecce game was disappointing, but look, since then they've won 3-0 and 5-0. They look excellent. They look like they're full of goals. They're converting their chances again. So for me, Juventus -1 Asian handicap here at -115 is a no-brainer bet. They are much better than Cagliari. I think Cagliari are one of the worst 3 teams in Serie A. I think everything would point towards that. Metrics, actual performances, the eye test, results as well. And I think it's a clear golfing class. And do you know what? This would be more than one unit if it wasn't for the fact that Cagliari were involved. They do scare me a bit because of the record that we've had on them in the last 3-4 years. The Cagliari curse. Paul Hitman Hughes was the latest to be hit by it, wasn't he? But James did win on a bet with Cagliari officially, so I think maybe we're turning the corner with them. It's just like I said, Juventus I think are streets clear better than Cagliari right now, and quite like a lot of big teams, for whatever reason, a lot of the big teams have a great record away at Cagliari. I've always noticed this, where the top teams come here and get a result. It is quite an easy place to go. We don't say that very often, do we? But Sardinia, nice place. I don't think it's particularly, ferocious crowd. And at the minute, the way Juventus are playing, a bare minimum we can expect from them is a victory. And if Cagliari defend like they did against Genoa, then it should be by quite a few goals. So -1 Asian handicap for me, Juve, 1 unit.
1 unit play. James, you're not risking a unit, but I guess it's a strong lean for the same bet here. I mean, it's been 5 years since Juve have been this type of price away at Cagliari, -$2, but they just look in really good order.
Yeah, they do. I'm really pleased Steve has got an official unit on this because it gets me off the hook, really. Steve and I, obviously, we do our picks without knowing what the other person's done. I was very tempted to do the same as Steve and put a full unit on this. It's just a lean for me instead. Why the lean and not the full pick from me? It's just a slight sense that we're still not sure Juventus can keep winning games, I suppose. They've won 4 of their last 5, and 3 of those 4 wins have been by 2 or more goals. Can they keep it up? The evidence is they probably can. It's something we've alluded to so many times on the show now recently about the strength in depth that they have in attack. They do have options, and they are playing, if you watch them, like a side who, when they score the first goal and the second goal, they keep going forward. They do want to win games by big margins if they can. So it does make them a good pick on the handicap. Cagliari, I agree with Steve. I don't think they're a particularly strong side. They're 16th in the Serie A table going into the games this weekend. They're 15th in the home league table as well. So it's not as if they're much stronger at home than they are generally. It should be a Juventus win, and it's great to back these big sides -1 on the Asian handicap, because really it does feel like a bet to nothing. As long as they win, then you're not going to lose anything. So just a lean from me, but same angle as Steve. It's Juventus -1 on the Asian handicap for me.
Yeah, 4 times they've played against teams in the top 4 this season, Cagliari. They have lost them all, both obviously at home. To Inter and to Milan. So just backing what Steve was suggesting in terms of Cagliari struggling against the better teams on their own patch. So we're a unit on Juve, strong lean from James as well. Let's move to Germany, Hoffenheim, Leverkusen, and we've got a significant pick from Steve on this one. This is 9:30 Saturday. Hoffenheim are +140, Leverkusen +165, the tie +275. I got Hoffenheim wrong in midweek when I did the live show with Steve. Thankfully, Steve didn't, to help us cash out our daily double. And this is an interesting one, Steve, isn't it, between 5th and 6th in the league?
Well, we got them right and wrong, didn't we, really? Well, I think we both agreed the goals were going to be in good order, but we didn't expect them, Hoffenheim, to be so good. 5-1 win. Gladbach looked a decent dog there, and I think that's huge credit to Hoffenheim to come straight out of the winter break and be that dominant. I think that's a sign of really good coaching, actually, and probably that the players are in good stead as well. So, it wouldn't surprise. They actually beat Leverkusen, of course, didn't they? First game of the season in one of the very few games that Erik ten Hag was in charge. And they may well do the double over them, certainly if Leverkusen defend as they did last week. The obvious bet is the overs. It's over 3.25 goals is going to be my pick. I'm going 1.5 units on this. Possibly I should have more on. If this was, the original staking plan, this would have been the 2-unit play. This is my most confident. This is my best bet of the week. They were my best bet in the midweek slate on the overs, and absolutely taking it again. I was so impressed what I saw. They looked like a dominant team, confident team. They've had a much, much better season this time around. They're higher than Leverkusen in the table. And, Leverkusen, I think the only way they're going to get points based on that defending against Stuttgart is by scoring goals themselves. So I would imagine both teams can contribute. There's certainly enough weapons, isn't there, on both sides. Hoffenheim may well be quite a live underdog here as well. Well, I say underdog. Actually, the favourites, aren't they? They are actually the favourites.
Favourites, aren't they? Yeah, 5's just. Yeah,
fair play. That's. I'm not arguing. I'm not disagreeing with that, actually. So, although it feels like they're a dog, just on the name. But, it should be full of goals. I mean, I could see this being crazy over, actually, for those who want to even bring the ladder out. But for me, on the 3.25 Asian goal line, it's got to be 1.5 units on that bet. I also quite like the corners here as well, but I'm not going to add too much into the pot. All things considered, I think we're going to get a frantic fixture. Really good watch here, and let the goals flow again.
Let's hope so. I mean, Hoffenheim were really good. I thought at one stage I might have just nicked my Gladbach to win one of the halves in midweek, but they did manage to add a fifth, didn't they, in the second half at Hoffenheim to scupper that particular bet. But yeah, the overs did cash for us. Just sticking with the Bundesliga, this is a lean, but I just want to cover it off early in the show because it is a Saturday early evening kickoff in Germany, 12:30 stateside. It is the game of the weekend in Germany. It's Leipzig against Bayern. Bayern here, Steve, are -186 to win this one. Obviously, that's still fairly short, but they've only been bigger once all season. That was when they were away at Stuttgart at -159. I mean, that might tempt Bayern moneyline backers, which, let's face it, doesn't happen that often here. You have got to lean in this, which just gives you general thoughts as well as you lean on it. I mean, is this a game Leipzig might be able to win? I mean, they're 4-1 to win at home. They've won 8 of 9 at home. Have they got a puncher's chance here against Bayern or not?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they do have a little bit of a puncher's chance. But, I mean, let's just address the goal scoring that has occurred since the Bundesliga resumed. And I got it completely wrong last week. It doesn't matter what sort of weather there is. If teams defend like they have been doing, you've got no chance with unders. I couldn't touch an under in this league right now with any team. There's only been 2 clean sheets since the resumption of the league. I think a couple of matches have gone under, but nothing's gone under 1.5 yet. It seems to be, I don't know, I can't really explain it, apart from maybe we're just in one of those seasons where everyone is so attack-minded and no one can be bothered defending. So it's got to be overs on the card at the minute, and this is, for me, one of the most obvious ones. It's a high goal line, though, 3.5, and we've got minus money for this. That's why it's not an official play, but it is my second best bet in the Bundesliga of the week. Huge history of goals in this game. Obviously, Bayern won 6-0 on the opening round. Last season, this ended 3-3. And I think Leipzig are quite a confident team. You know, Bayern have got the title won, really, haven't they? There's no real pressure on them. Leipzig, I think, will get in the top 4 because they've got nothing to focus on but the league. I think we'll get quite an open game, quite a relaxed game. Bayern did let a few of their backers down midweek. And usually that means maybe there's a reaction. They won't be happy at only winning 3-1 against Cologne. I think they come here and they get potentially a big win. But if Leipzig bring their top sort of game to the table, maybe they can surprise them like that 3-3 draw last season. So it makes sense for me. Goals again, over 3.5 line, -125. It is quite a strong lean, and it would be my second best bet in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, I mean, look, we know that whenever there's a dominant team, bettor's always going to look to nil and half-time, full-time. And as Steve sort of alluded to, that was scuppered with that Cologne goal early on against Bayern in midweek. And they're not to be trusted to nil at all. I don't think they're always going to concede goals, to make Steve's point about defending in the Bundesliga. Just a quick word, James, from you on this one. I mean, what are your thoughts on Bayern? I mean, obviously, they're going to be involved in the Champions League in midweek. I mean, they're so dominant, they're sort of PSG-esque a little bit as well. Is there any angles in, not necessarily for this game, but I mean, you know, they're breaking all sorts of records in Germany. It's as if Vincent Kompany knows that, you know, he came in for a little bit of stick when he got the job, and it's like, what can I do differently domestically? Well, he's doing it, I guess, isn't he? Because he's breaking all these records.
Yeah, on Bayern, I said earlier in the season, Dan, I thought they were too big in the Champions League. They were, I think, 4th favourites at the time to win it. They're into 2nd favourites now with most people behind Arsenal, which I think is fair, given that Arsenal beat them. But they still look a good bet for me in that competition. And you mentioned Vincent Kompany there, Dan. I think, you know, the job he's done at Bayern, it just shows as bettors how difficult it can be sometimes to get a read on how a manager's going to do in a job. You know, he was a surprise choice for many. When he got the job, based on what he'd done as a manager up until that point, he'd done fine, but there was a feeling it might be too early for him in his career. He's been absolutely fantastic. So it goes to show it can be difficult to read sometimes how a player who then becomes a manager does in different circumstances. Maybe it is that he's, you know, more suited to the elite environment that he's working in now. But, you know, the way they've torn through the season in the Bundesliga, it's not a surprise, obviously, they're top of the table, but the level of dominance they've shown has been absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, we've been a bit unlucky, really, in backing them on the handicaps sometimes on the weeks when they haven't actually won big. But I think they've shown they can win big many, many times in the domestic competitions this season.
Yeah, I think they've got the best ever record, haven't they, since the Bundesliga started at the halfway stage. Joint at best points when Pep Guardiola was there, 13-14, but more goals scored. It really has been a bit of a procession to a certain extent for Bayern. They are plus 450 to win the Champions League. Incidentally, they are 2nd favourites behind Arsenal, even though Arsenal beat them pretty easily. Make of that what you will. Let's get some more official picks, shall we? We're going to start in Spain with Steve. I love this one. This is 12:30 on Sunday. Celta Vigo against Rayo. Celta are just over evens to win this game. Rayo plus 285, the tie at plus 215. But this, Steve, to my eyes, is combining 2 winning bets from last week.
Yeah, I mean, it's not often you see me with an SGP, is it, Dan?
No,
Willingly.
not at all.
But this is an official SGP half
It's a throwback.
unit. Yeah, throwback. Yeah, half a unit play. Look, I've banged on recently, haven't I? How impressed I am with Celta de Vigo, and I want to stay on their train. I really do. But the odds that we getting on them on the money line here, I think it's plus 105, that's perfectly acceptable as a single. I wanted a little bit more, if I'm being honest, if I was to just have like a full unit or more than one unit on them outright. Ideally, I would have wanted a minus 0.25 Asian handicap. But I wanted to stay on their train, so I needed to combine another aspect into it. So Celta Vigo money line, but then, of course, Rayo Vallecano are involved, so we're looking at corners. And in this instance, I am going to go with Rayo corners themselves. Over 4.5 Rayo corners is a line I believe they will cover in this game. And you get plus 270 for this SGP. It's a half a unit play. The reason I've gone half a unit overall rather than two separate singles is because if you get one aspect wrong, you're probably going to get the other aspect wrong. In that if Rayo take the lead in this game, it's not something they've done most of the season, although recently they have. Their corner count will go down and Celta's will go up. I don't want to take match corners here because Celta Vigo are, for me, one of the worst teams for corners in La Liga. There's 6 teams who average less than 4 corners a game, and they are one of them. They're not a team who I think it's the system, the 3-4-3 system. The attacking players cut inside too much. That's my personal theory. Say 6 teams average less than 4 corners, only 2 teams average less than 4 corners against per game, and that's Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid. But yeah, so I think Rayo, what's likely to happen here, I think Celta Vigo hopefully will be ahead in the game, which means Rayo are chasing, which means when they're chasing, they're getting the wide players forward, stretching the game, and they're getting corners themselves, and hopefully they're not finishing their chances. So that's the theory. That's how I see it going. I'm seeing something like 1-0, 2-0 Celta Vigo, Rayo with their usual misses, Rayo with their usual corners. So we get that home win, and we get at least 5 away corners in the game. Plus 270. I think it looks good, doesn't it? Half a unit. This is a juicy play.
Love this one. Celta Vigo on the money line. In an SGP with over 4.5 Rayo corners, plus 270. Rolling it back to not just SGPs, but hot dogs as well. What more do you want? Back to the future with Steve. That's Celta Vigo against Rayo. We've got some really good plays in France coming away. James is first up with Angers against Marseille, which is the main game on Saturday in Liga. 3:05 Eastern kickoff stateside. Angers plus 460 here. James Marseille minus 167, who showed no mercy in the Coupe de France in midweek, and they've got a big game in the Champions League next midweek. What are we doing with Marseille away at Angers?
Yeah, I strongly fancy Marseille here down to win. So it's a 1-unit play for me on Marseille on the Asian handicap with a 1-goal start, which is available at plus 100. So if Marseille win the game by a single goal, you'll get your stakes back. And if they go on and win by 2 or more goals, then you're going to make a profit. And you're right, it was a huge win from Marseille against Bayern, the amateur side they faced in the French Cup. But will have done them a great deal of confidence. Lots of different players getting on the score sheet there. And I thought they played pretty well in the Champions Trophy in their previous game against PSG.
Unlucky, weren't they?
They lost on penalties, and they'll be devastated because they were leading going into the final seconds of that game, really. But if they step away from the fact they lost and look at the performance, I think they'll be pretty encouraged by how they played. So a couple of good performances from Marseille going into this. They do have that huge game against Liverpool in the Champions League next week. Now, you may be concerned about that in the sense that maybe they're going to rotate this weekend, and maybe they will a little bit, but their team news is pretty good. They've got some players back from injury recently, which I think is a factor here. Amin Gouiri, who missed the AFCON through injury. He would have been there with Algeria, but he was out. He's come back from injury recently and has looked sharp. And a playmaker, Junior Traore's come back as well. So they've got a couple more options in attack, which I think is important because it means they can rest 1 or 2 of the players who've had a lot of games recently. Just gives them that extra strength, I think, in the final third over 90 minutes because they can make changes. And I think they're a good bet to win here against an Angers side who did really well in the first half of the season. They played some good football and got more points on the board than people maybe expected. Their team news this weekend is a concern in that there may be a couple of big players out for them. We don't know that for sure as we're recording, but their playmaker Abdelli, who's a really important player, who's just back from the AFCON, he may not be involved this weekend. There's talk that he may be leaving the club this window. And the same also applies to their number one striker, Sharif, who's been linked with a number of big clubs like Crystal Palace and various other teams in the Premier League and the Bundesliga. So there's a lot of uncertainty at Angers this month. We do find in France sometimes the January window can be disruptive for certain teams, certain clubs who are selling clubs. Angers are certainly one of those clubs, and I just think it makes it a bit uneasy for them from week to week now until we get into February. So I may be looking to oppose them again. And I think against Marseille, who look pretty strong, it's going to be a difficult game for Angers this weekend. So 1 unit play from me. It's on Marseille, -1 on the Asian handicap.
I must admit, Steve, when I saw that equalising goal in the Trophée des Champions, I didn't realise the context of it. Sorry to bring it up with your Marseille persuasions, but it goes from one end to the other. Steve shaking his head with that one. Have you got any brief thoughts on Marseille, just generally, Steve, given the fact that James has mentioned it? I mean, are you confident your team's going to get through Champions League-wise? You're not over the line there, are you, by any stretch of the imagination?
Oh, you like to rub salt into wounds, don't you, Dan?
Sorry.
That is.
This was off script. This one, ladies.
I was
and
on under 3 goals as well in that game, by the way. So.
Oh dear, just another one. Another one.
Do you know what? It's another one of those. I just want to erase it from my system. Look, Marseille. It frustrates me. I feel like this is a season PSG could actually be vulnerable potentially in a title race for once, and they're not making the most of it. It's lost to Nantes at home. There was a red card in that game which greatly affected things, though. And we know Marseille aren't very good against teams who come and park the bus defensively. I think James makes a really good point about Angers, though. You know, it might well be the second half of the season is very much more difficult for them, and it might be a scrape over the relegation line eventually. And it is. I mentioned Cagliari as an easy place to go. Angers is quite an easy place to go historically, isn't it? As we've talked about before. Not a tough environment. So Marseille should. You never know with Marseille, do you? But I think Marseille should be bouncing back with a win they've got. I mean, the Bayern result. But I mean, that might be why he went with such a strong team to try and get them confident. 9-0 win there. They were very, very professional. And it might be one of those where actually, you can laugh about the result and the opponent, but it might just get them ticking in the right direction again.
Yeah, potentially. And coaches use games like that to gain a bit of momentum, a bit of confidence as well. Betting without Paris Saint-Germain, incidentally. Marseille plus 225 favourites. Lens, of course, at minus 125. And that's the game, Steve, where you've got some interest in this weekend. This is 11 a.m. on Saturday. Lens against Auxerre. Lens are short price favourites here. They're clear at the top of the table by a point. They've won their last 9. Incredible run. Are they going to go and win easy again, Steve?
Yeah, this is my best bet in France this week. And, back in my early days of betting, before we had metrics and stuff like that, before highlights were even that widely available, a lot of my betting was based on simply stats and results, things like that. And sometimes and often the most obvious looking bets are the best bets. And for me, this is just Lens should win the game. So, you've got the best, second best home team in the league, 7 wins out of 8 at home. Auxerre have the worst away record, 6 defeats out of 8. Really, really limited team on the road. It's got to be a home win. So in that case, minus 1.25 Asian handicap, close to the even money mark, is a bit of a no-brainer selection in my opinion. If they win by 1 goal exactly, then okay, we're going to lose half, but you're not going to lose the whole stake. I've looked back this season, roughly half of Lens' wins have been by 2 goals or more, and roughly half of Auxerre's defeats have been by 2 goals or more. And Auxerre have conceded 2 or more goals on several occasions this season. So, yeah, there's not really much more you can add. Lens have had a great season. At home, they've got the bit between their teeth. And, last time I think I did have a winning bet in an Auxerre game away from home at Brest. Both teams score no. They do have a bit more firepower back now, Sinioko. But honestly, I'm not sure they'll score here against Lens. So, you're looking at a win-to-nil sort of territory, 2-0, 3-0. And a one-unit play on this Lens minus 1.25 Asian handicap. It's sometimes you're better off keeping it simple, Dan, and just going with the rare basics on the card. I'm interested in James's opinion on this game, actually. I actually thought this might be one of his picks. Would the handicap size put you off, James, or would you agree with me here?
Yeah, I think I can well see Lens winning by a couple of goals. I think their form is so good now that you have to say they are title contenders. They're up at the top of the table. We're into the second half of the season now. PSG certainly seem to think so. They've referenced that they see Lens as title challengers. And we've said before on the show many times, not just this season, but last season, these teams that are not in Europe, as Lens are not in Europe this season, they've got such a great chance to almost overachieve, as it were, in the league. And they're certainly taking full advantage of that. So I can definitely see them winning. Steve's right about Auxerre. They've got a couple of players back now from the AFCON in Sinioko and Danny Namasso. So they look a bit stronger in attack. We're not quite sure this weekend in France just how many of the players who've been back a week or under are actually going to start games. That's from the AFCON. There is the issue of readapting because the change in temperature is not huge, but there is a change in temperature from what they've been playing in Morocco to certain parts of France. So we may see some of these players who are back now off the bench. It gives Auxerre a little bit more in attack, but Lens have been absolutely brilliant. And anybody that's watched them, defensively, they've been really solid. They use a back three. They're very difficult to break down. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they cleared this handicap.
Would you both rather play Lens than Marseille and betting without? I mean, there's a big difference in price, as I mentioned before. Lens betting without minus 125, Marseille plus 225, Lille are plus 350, James. Would you bet any of those three? Do the prices look about right? I mean, what derails Lens' title bid here? Is it just experience and quality ultimately that'll get PSG over the line?
Probably, but I think I would only really now back Lens, to be honest, in the without PSG market, primarily because of the points gap they've built up, which is fairly significant. I think that Marseille defeat in the first game of 2026 at home to Nantes was a serious blow to their hopes of really challenging for the title. That Lens points cushion that they've got, they're not away from PSG, obviously, but they're away from most of the rest of the pack, and I just don't see them at the moment dropping that many points. They've got a very settled style of play. They've got a very settled starting 11. Enough backup players for what they've got to deal with, which is really just League One. So right now, for me, it's looking like a straight shootout between PSG and Lens for the title.
I would agree.
Steve, 8 points of difference. Yeah, would you? I mean, are Marseille out of it? I mean, minus 125, Lens betting without would be a little bit of a lean if anyone wanted to get involved.
Lens are doing what Marseille should have done last season when Marseille had no European commitments. I think Marseille are they should really qualify for the Champions League playoff round at least now, I think, Marseille. So there's going to be more involvement there. This French Cup now might be even a priority for Marseille now that Paris Saint-Germain have shockingly been knocked out of it. Yeah. Lens, of course, still in that as well. The maddest stat about Lens is they've underachieved their expected goals by 7. This is according to Understat. Their overachievement has been defensively, but only by 10 goals, which I say only. I mean, it feels like it could be by more. They've only overachieved on their points by 7. I think they're kind of doing what they should be doing. That's the thing with Lens. It's pretty deserved, and betting without, it would have to be them right now. I look, if we're being honest, they're probably going to finish second. Paris Saint-Germain will probably win the title, but this is one of those years where they've got a chance, they've got a run at it, and look, when Lille won the league that year, maybe they can take some inspiration from their great rivals and actually give PSG we don't know what PSG would be like down the stretch in a proper head-to-head battle, do we? Because they're normally miles clear by now.
Fascinating to find out when it comes to the French action. One more official play to come from James. It's Strasbourg against Metz, which is 9 a.m. on Sunday. This is a big regional clash, James, in the east of the country.
Yes, it is a big derby between Strasbourg and Metz, and I'm putting one unit here on Strasbourg to win the game with a minus 1 goal start on the Asian handicap, because I think they should be too strong for Metz for various reasons. It's a big talking point of a game because it's the first League One match in charge at Strasbourg for Gary O'Neill, the new manager there who's taken over. We've had this very high-profile change of manager at Strasbourg with Liam Rossigna leaving mid-season very abruptly to take over at Chelsea. Obviously, that's been a huge talking point in the Premier League. And he did a good job at Strasbourg. I can see why they were certainly interested in him. But, I don't necessarily think the change is a bad thing for Strasbourg, to be honest, because they hadn't, it'd be a bit harsh to say they'd gone stale under Rossigna, but they certainly weren't overachieving this season. They were probably doing as well as you might have expected them to. They started really well, but actually in the last couple of months before Rossigna left, he was struggling really to regenerate the team and get them breaking down sides who were a bit more prepared for them. So I think this change of manager, let's wait and see how Gary O'Neill does, but it may not be a bad thing for them. He's spoken very well so far to the media. He's been very positive about the opportunity that he's got to work for Strasbourg. And, we've mentioned Marseille and their big win in the French Cup. Strasbourg won 6-0 in the French Cup last weekend in O'Neill's first game in charge. So that won't do him any harm at all going into this. They're going to have great support at home for this derby. And if you look at the Strasbourg fans, what do they think of this change of manager and all the talking points relative to Rossigna going to Chelsea? There's some disappointment that their manager's left mid-season, but to be honest, they're more focused on O'Neill now and waiting to see how he does. And I think he'll be really well backed by the fans this weekend. So I think everything's pretty positive, really, for Strasbourg. The opposite is the case for Metz. It's a really good time to be playing Metz. They are bottom of the League One table. They still have a couple of players away at the AFCON who are with Senegal, which means they're short of quality in attack. Habib Diallo and Sabali are the players in question. That robs them of a lot of goals threat in this game. And they lost 4-0 at home to League Two opposition in the French Cup last weekend. A really poor performance with a pretty strong lineup, which has put the manager under huge pressure going into this game. So, it's a bit harsh to say it's a tale of two moods. I'm not saying Strasbourg are flying at the moment, but things are pretty good. Things are pretty bad at Metz, and I think they're under a lot of pressure here to get a result. The manager is potentially playing for his job, and I just don't think they're good enough to avoid defeat here. I think Strasbourg should be strong enough to win, and we've seen Metz lose by more than one goal many times this season. I think 6 of their 11 defeats in League One have been by 2 or more goals. So they have had a habit of struggling when they go behind in games, and that could happen here. So it's a 1-unit play from me. I'm pretty confident that Gary O'Neill is going to make a good start here to his League One time in charge at Strasbourg. It's Strasbourg -1 on the Asian handicap for me.
Let's rattle through some leans, shall we? We've got Italy and France to deal with before one more official play, which will come at the end of the show because it's Monday night and it's in Spain. So Italy, first of all, just the one lean here from Steve. This is the early game on Sunday, 6:30 Eastern, and it's Parma, Genoa, Steve.
Yeah, this is my second best bet in Serie A this week. It is only a lean, but it's over 2 on the Asian goals between Parma and Genoa. You would only have lost this bet one time in the last 13 Genoa fixtures. So, it's no surprise that we're kind of still on this overs train with Genoa. They've played completely different since Patrick Vieira left the club. So that's definitely a trend. The biggest problem here, and this is why it's not an official unit, is trying to get an actual genuine over 2.5 goals game for Parma has been very, very difficult of late. It's been like getting blood out of a stone, really, hasn't it? We did get that over against Lecce, but I think 6 of the last 7 have ended under 2.5 goals. So they have a knack of getting involved in good games, end-to-end games with a lot of shots, but the goals are not always being converted. I just think that changes. Overall, I just think that does change if they keep playing the way they're doing, and this might be the match to bring it out of them as such. With Genoa in town, who were confident after that 3-0 win, probably a good chance of an exact push with this bet. Have exactly 2 goals. I think you need that 2 goals in your pocket. But yeah, over 2 Asian goals. It looks a low goal line. It's because of Parma's results. I think we can get at least 2 goals on the card and hopefully manage to get a rare Parma over here. It's close to even money, isn't it, Dan? Is it minus 109? I think is this one.
Yeah, minus 109. Minus 109. Yeah, I look with these games. I think you always want the 1-1, 2-0 either way onside. I think this is a bit of a free hit, and we've talked about Genoa a lot when it comes to the overs, so fingers crossed for us. Well, that's just a lean. We've got 3 leans in France for you. James, first up, Toulouse against Nice, 1 p.m. on Saturday. James, what you got here?
Yes, it's a lean on Nice here, Dan, who are clear underdogs in this game. Toulouse are minus 115 to win it. Nice are plus 300. I think the gap there in terms of what the market thinks about these two sides is too big. I think Nice have got a better chance than the market would suggest of getting something. So it's Nice with a quarter goal start on the Asian handicap for me at plus 125. And the main reason I'm siding with Nice here is they've had a change of manager recently, which has had a big positive impact for them. They've reappointed Claude Puel, who was manager for several seasons at Nice about a decade or more ago, and he's come back in, which was a surprise. He'd been out of management for some time, but he's had an instant positive impact for me. Been in charge for 2 games. Nice have played a lot better in those 2 matches. They drew 1-1 against Strasbourg. I think they had their best XG of the season in that game, which was Puel's first in charge. And then they were pretty good in the French Cup last weekend as well. They drew 1-1 against Nantes. So there are signs of improvement for Nice. And what I would say about these 2 teams, Dan, is that if you were at the start of the season, nearly everybody would have said Nice would finish around the same place in the table as Toulouse, if not higher. Now, they're 5 points behind at the moment, but that's because they've underachieved. If they start playing closer to their potential, then I would expect Nice to get more points than Toulouse in the second half of the season. So there's some speculation to that, but I think just in terms of the quality of the sets of players on the pitch, there's not a great deal of difference is the main point between these 2 sides. So I think the minus money price on Toulouse is just too short, and therefore I would find a way of supporting Nice. So it's just a lean for me because we're only 2 games into this change of manager at Nice, but the early signs are good. So it's a lean on Nice in some way for me this weekend.
Yeah, a bit of progression under Puel maybe for Nice for that one. Rennes against Le Havre for you, Steve. Here, my note saying Rennes sneaky good. You guys have probably been talking about Rennes for a good few weeks. They've won 8 of their last 9 here, Steve.
Yeah, this is my second best bet in France this week. It is Rennes on the Asian handicap, -1 against Le Havre. Get plus money on this. For me, they're just different quality. Gulf is too much between the 2 teams. You've got a Rennes side who are actually doing really well in 6th. They might even be a dark horse for the top 4. Bet Rivers are offering 12-1 on Rennes for top 3. 3rd place is possibly beyond them, but I think 4th wouldn't be. There's some interesting teams. The massive advantage for Rennes, they're not in Europe this season, and I'm not always convinced by Lyon and Lille. Strasbourg, I think, will do well under Gary O'Neill. I rate Gary O'Neill, but they're probably a little bit too far off the pace. So Rennes are a team to follow in the second half of the season. They should beat Le Havre, who, every year, the last few years, they seem to be hovering down there in that relegation battle. And, they're a grinding sort of team, aren't they? They're nothing too flashy. Defence can sometimes save them. But ultimately, 1 win out of 8 away from home, 4 goals scored on the road this season. That's not good enough. Rennes should, as a bare minimum, get the victory on the card, and I think probably because of that clean sheet potential, then that's why the handicap would always interest me as well. So that would be my second best bet of the week in France, and actually my 3rd best bet is James's next lean, I do believe.
Lovely. That's Nantes against Paris FC. I mean, surely everyone's on Paris FC here, aren't they, James, after they beat their city rivals in the Coupe last time out? It's an easy pick for players.
Well, I think people will be, but I'm certainly not. I'm actually opposing Paris FC here, although we should mention that is an amazing result they've had there in the French Cup by going to PSG and winning 1-0. And it was a former PSG trainee, Jonathan Ikone, who scored the winning goal for Paris FC. So, listen, it's a tremendous night for them that they've had there. I felt they were a bit lucky to win it. They didn't do much in the game other than score the goal. I know that's always seen as quite a harsh criticism of the side. They did what they needed to do, but PSG really should have won the game. And I think again, the price here on Paris FC, a bit like the price on Toulouse in the Toulouse-Nice game, it is too short because Paris FC are clear favourites here to win away from home at Nantes. Nantes are plus 210. Paris FC plus 132. I don't really buy that. I think the two teams are really well matched. I think there's very little to pick between them. They're next to each other in the league table. Nantes have actually got more points on the board in the last 5 games than Paris FC. They've got more points on the board than Paris FC in the last 10 games as well. So I think there's some positives for Nantes who've played pretty well the last couple of games. They had that massive win at Marseille in the first League One match of the year. They won 2-0 there. Played some really good football in that game. They were far more positive than a lot of people thought. And then they played pretty well in the French Cup last weekend. So I don't see much difference between the two sides here. I think it's a 50-50 match. I wouldn't want to back Nantes at plus 210 because it could end in a draw. But I think Nantes tie no bet would be the way to play this. That's available at plus 115. I think that price is a really good price on Nantes. So Nantes tie no bet at plus 115 is my lean on this match.
Yeah, maybe a bit of recency bias with that Paris FC price, given the fact that they did beat PSG in the Cup last time out. One more game to look at, and we've got an official play from Steve here. It's on the Monday night game in La Liga, 3 p.m. Kickoff, Elche against Sevilla. Elche plus 123, Sevilla plus 215 here. Elche without a win in 3. Sevilla, though, winless in 4, scoreless in 4. There's off-pitch issues, I think. They're in the process of being sold, or at least a buyer has been found. I'm reading that Sergio Ramos might be heading up some sort of crew to purchase the side where he started his career. I've got no idea. But on the pitch, Steve, you've got a unit on this one. What are we playing?
Been building up towards this official unit on Elche, haven't we? This is now going to be it. Elche minus 0.25 on the Asian handicap. Minus 107, I think it is now. And listen, Sevilla, I opposed them last week, and I think I'm really happy to keep riding against them at the moment. This is not a great phase for them at all. The match against Celta Vigo kind of went as I expected it. And Vigo, in the end, nicked the match with a penalty, but Celta ultimately just never looked like conceding to me in the game. There was a lot of hot air from Sevilla in that fixture. They're still missing players. The worst thing about the African Nations Cup is the third place game. No one wants to be involved in it, do they? And you've got Akor Adams and Chidi Ajuke still out there. 2 of their better players, for me, can make a big difference in attack. And this Elche side, I've mentioned them before, underrated, decent side. Beat Rayo 4-0 at home, beat Girona 3-0 at home. Pushed Villarreal, got a draw at Valencia last week. Decent outfit. Better side for me. This might actually, in terms of pure raw value, be my best bet of the week in terms of, not necessarily in terms of confidence, but in terms of actual value, because I think Elche should be bordering minus money just to win the game. And you can get, I think, plus 125 on the money line. Sevilla, we've mentioned their overachievement this season, Dan, and they have at both ends of the pitch. Rather worryingly, according to Understat, they should be second bottom of the points table. Now, that's a big concern when you've got teams like Levante, Girona, who have been really poor this season, above you in that expected points table. So, I've mentioned before how their overachievement has been a positive. Now I'm using it as a negative. And I'm riding against Sevilla right now. Looks a great spot to oppose them. And I think, look, we've got the draw as a half loss, but this is a home win for me. And I think, Sevilla are going to continue this losing run.
My modelling is rather wild at the moment, as you guys know, because I've talked to you about it. But I make Elche minus 170 for this game. Make it that minus 1.
I make them minus money.
Yeah, I know.
Definitely agree on minus money. But
I know,
that's
maybe not
Dan.
that short, but yeah, I know. It's just the way that I've modelled this. But we'll see what happens with that.
So for you, then, this would be a massive bet, then, value bet.
Well, we'll see what happens. Yeah, my models can be a bit all over the place at the moment, I must admit. Elche are 5th in the home-only table, I think everything you just said about Sevilla there is interesting. I will be. This is the safest play. Some of my models are a bit wild. Don't take them as read. Caveat emptor and all that. Steve, James, thanks for your company. Good luck to one and all. We will keep everyone updated via our X feeds. That is a wrap for Betting Weekly Extra Time European Edition. Follow us at Because We Win and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Get your picks in the comments section below. We will be back next week. From all of us for now, though, it is goodbye.